Welcome, friends, to The Bridegroom Comes. This is a focus on the wedding parables and wedding messages of the Bible. A favorite author of mine says that one example is worth many precepts. And so we're going to first look at a great example. It's the first of 5 wedding messages that we're going to be considering. And I like what Isaiah 46:10 says, that God declares the end from the beginning. And Ecclesiastes 3:15 in the New English Bible says, what is to come has been already. God summons each event back in its turn. That's how he declares what's coming. But it's often encoded, history, we think, well, it's dull maybe, but no, the Jews don't think so. And we're talking about the Exodus from Egypt. When God afflicted executed judgment on Egypt for enslaving Israel and throwing their babies in the river, he took them to a covenant at Sinai, and he said, if you keep my covenant, you'll be a kingdom. And he later said to them, return to me, I'm married to you. So he regarded that covenant as a marriage relationship, and this is what the wedding parables are all about. It's not about a snatch to heaven, out of here. God took them to the wilderness to prove what was in their heart, and it wasn't good, okay? And we will need a new covenant promise fulfilled to us before we're ready to meet Christ in the sky when he comes. We need an experience like the covenant, the new covenant, and what it can do for writing his law in our hearts. And we need to live well for the 7-year period to be safe to take to heaven. Otherwise, we could start trouble all over again. And the church described as wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked in Revelation 3, that's the Laodicean church. Not good, not ready, not for a rapture now, okay? So we need to have a better experience before we can be happy to be in heaven in the presence of people like Paul, etc. Well, the point is that when God made a covenant at Sinai, he got an ignorant bride. They worshipped a calf 40 days later, and this must not happen to Christ. And there is embedded in the wedding parables clues here and there for how that won't happen. And so we're going to look at, first of all, the most popular wedding parable, best known, is Matthew 25, when 10 women went to meet the bridegroom, and there was a delay. And while they were waiting, they slumbered and slept, it says in verse 5. But at midnight, there was a cry made, the bridegroom comes. Well, that cry at midnight we find also in Exodus, okay? In Exodus, the 12th chapter, verse 29 and 30, is, I believe it is, when there was a cry at midnight. Great cry went up from Egypt. It was really death that fell on the firstborn of Egypt. So it was really a sudden, unlooked-for calamity. We don't expect the firstborn to die in America, but America, like Egypt, has enslaved people in substances like alcohol, tobacco, drugs. Even medical care is a form of bondage, and I can say that because I'm a retired physician. If you have to go every month for a prescription and the tests or something like that, this is bondage. We should learn to eat better, and I've done it most of my life right. I'm 82 and in great health, but I wouldn't trade all my what can I say? I wouldn't want to trade what I know for all the pills and shots that Pfizer or Merck wants to give me, okay? And not going to go there right now, but let's take a look at the fact that God has given us all that we need to live well, wisdom, and the wedding parables suggest that he will give us his spirit, and we need to learn some things in order to fit those wedding parables together. Each prophecy of them has some information that help us understand the others. And we mentioned the cry at midnight, which was Passover. And Luke's wedding parable has triple clues for Passover. So when they say, you don't know the day or hour, that was the Matthew 25, verse, I think it's 13. Well, the word understand means in Greek, I mean, it was, you don't know is the way it's translated, but it could mean understand. And if we understand it well, the reason is because it says, "For the kingdom of heaven's like a man traveling to a far country," and that's a 9/11 provision or modification for Passover a month later. If an Israelite took a long trip, couldn't get back in time for Passover, they were not excused. Passover meant judgment, and we all have to face judgment. So they were to keep Passover a month later, as the days of Noah. That's another example. Noah, the flood came in with Passover timing, but in the second spring month, for reasons in 9/11. Okay, Numbers 9 verses 10 and 11 explain the provisions for a late Passover. And I'm seeing that this year there is a special significance to a 9/11 provision that affects us from May 19. If you were to Google, well, first of all, in the Bible, Joel 2, verse 1 and 2 says the day of the Lord is a day of darkness. And if you Google a dark day, it turned out to be May 19, 1780. And it was so dark, unexplainably dark, that New Englanders thought that Christ was coming. But it repeated 200 years later to the very day when Mount St. Helens erupted the night before and put ash into the sky, and wind carried that ash over 3 states in the Northwest. So it was a dark day on May 19, 1980, just like May 19, 1780. And I think that's not just a coincidence. If you think it is, I'm sorry for you, because really only God can do those things and have them arranged. The chances of that happening, like 1 in a million, billion, trillion, I don't know. But I just say dark day is marked for May 19. And this year it has real huge significance because the Gregorian calendar that we're following has no correlation between new month and new moon. New moon in Bible times signaled the new month, but not with our Catholic calendar, Gregorian. The new moon happens any old time. And this year, the new moon will be in May, on May 9. But the 10th day from there is May 19, and that's the day that Noah entered the ark, on the 10th day of the month, second month, spring. In the Bible, the calendar began in the spring. It didn't begin in midwinter and end up in winter. Okay, it was springtime when the calendar began. I thought things were going to happen last spring, but really when I understood and thought about the yearly calendar, how it starts in spring, this year Hamas has done the very thing that we need to look for the wedding parables to come together. Because it says in Zechariah 14, 1 and 2, that the day of the Lord comes. And by the way, that phrase, day of the Lord, is the end time extension of night of the Lord in Egypt. When God executed judgment, he said, this is night of the Lord. But the phrase is only found once. Day of the Lord is 25 times that. And I think it's going to be 25 times bigger, okay, with countries around the world impacted by what is going to happen. And it says that nations will be gathered against Jerusalem to battle. Houses will be rifled, women raped, half the city goes into captivity. And then the Lord is going to fight against them. And one way he's going to do it, I believe, it says in Joel 3:16, actually verse 15 refers to the day of the Lord, and in verse 16 says, the Lord will roar from Jerusalem, the heavens and earth will shake. Now that's one big earthquake, if the heavens and earth will shake. In fact, in the day of the Lord, Isaiah 2:12, verse 21 says, God will shake terribly the earth. And I'm saying, hey, that's more than we want, okay? And I understand that the San Andreas fault is 80 years overdue. Scientists say it could bring calamity any time, even tomorrow. I don't think so. I think that God has appointed times for judgment, and we will see it this spring, okay? When May 19 happens to fall on the day that Noah entered the ark. Christ said, no man knows the day or hour, but as the days of Noah, okay? So we need to read the whole thing. Sometimes we want to be quick to agree that nobody knows. Well, you might not know, but I think I know. And wait and see. If we see Muslims attacking Jerusalem, all bets are off for you as far as I'm concerned, because when Muslims take the city, the Lord is going to, those Muslims are going to celebrate their mosque and the Quran, which says Allah has no son. Well, the son in Revelation 5:5 is the Lion of Judah. He protects Judah or Jerusalem. And so he's going to roar and they're going to flee, okay, basically. And it will prove to them that, you know, they're not entitled to Jerusalem. Even though President Erdogan of Turkey says so, it was part of our empire and the Ottoman Empire. Well, not now. And so it's going to be very interesting, I think, this spring. And so I'm just looking at the different wedding parables, and we've talked about the 10 virgins and how that there was a calamity that made the midnight cry. And it really means the bridegroom comes as an opportunity for a wedding, okay? And in Luke 12, we're supposed to be ready that when he comes and knocks, we open immediately. There's a rule of first use in the Bible that I like. It's Revelation 1, 10 or 11, which says Christ is the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last. We know in John 1, 1 and 14, he's also the Word. So go where the Word is first found in the Bible, and not all the time, but sometimes that word has significant meaning for the end time because Christ is that word first and last, and he's consistent. And so we want to see how the midnight cry was first found in Egypt, but applies to the wedding parable. And when in Luke's wedding parable, we're supposed to open immediately, the word immediately is first found in Matthew 4, when Christ called James and John to follow him. They immediately left the ship and their father and followed him. I think that's an end-time calling that's high, an opportunity for us. If we recognize that knock is what it means, okay? And what's the knock? The knock is the earthquake, okay? When the Lord roars, the heavens and earth shake, because the ancient church of Laodicea, where he knocked, Christ knocked there, but it ended in an earthquake. Okay, we like the idea that gentle Jesus, always knocking at the door of our heart, wants to be part of all we do. Well, it's a good meaning. It's okay, but Revelation is also how things end, and we should be understanding that that he is going to knock, and the Laodicean church, type and antitype, it ended in an earthquake in 63 A.D. I think modern wealthy. The Laodicean, the criticism of Laodicea, by the way, the word laos means people, and decea or decree means judgment. So people in a time of judgment, okay, and we're there, okay, we're living in a time of judgment, and we will know it when the earth quakes. And when it happens, we must open immediately, according to Luke 12:36. And it says, "Blessed is that servant whom his Lord finds watching when he comes. He will gird himself, make them sit to eat, and serve them." Okay, his servants. Well, that's what he did at the Last Supper. That's a clue for Passover. Watching is also a clue for Passover. And I don't mean staring at the sky. Watching is translated from Gregorio, means be awake. And we can't be awake every night. That would be unfair for Christ to ask that. But there's only one night in the year that Israel was supposed to be awake, to watch. It was on Passover. They were to watch and pray that God would pass over them in judgment. And he did in Egypt. Well, Christ asked his disciples on the eve of Passover also, watch and pray. Couldn't you watch 1 hour? Well, they couldn't. They fell asleep. And I think they lost a huge blessing and opportunity. I believe if they had stayed awake and prayed like Christ did, they would have been strengthened spiritually. And when the Jews came with the Romans to take Christ, they could say, we're going with you to the trial. And when the Pharisees accused Christ of wanting to tear down their temple and build it again in 3 days, how could you do that? Yeah, take him, crucify him. Well, the point is, witness. If the disciples had stood up and said, no, he's not talking about your temple, he's talking about his body. And in 3 days he's coming out of the grave. Come out and see Sunday morning. If they had said that, witnesses could have prevented the Jewish leaders from lying, and Pentecost 50 days later could have seen the whole nation in repentance. And if that had happened, the whole nation could have been Christians, and gospel could have gone to the Roman Empire with persecution, but it would be a much better, more Bible-oriented laws today than everybody doing their own thing like we're seeing happening in America. So, bad situation. Disciples failed him more than we know. And when they ask, are you going to restore the kingdom to Israel at this time, in Acts 1:6, when they were going up the hill the last time, he didn't rake them over the coal and said, you failed me badly. He just said, it's not for you to know the times or seasons. But Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 5:1, of the times and seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write. And now he's using that same phrase of when the kingdom is going to be established. And he says, you know them. For the day of the Lord comes as a thief in the night. When they're saying peace and safety, sudden destruction comes. Well, God came as a thief in the night to Egypt. Nobody saw God. It was dark. He was invisible. And he took their slaves. He was like a thief. He took the slaves from Egypt. So that reference is really about an Egypt experience, but America is like Egypt today. Okay, can we get it? We have enslaved people in alcohol, tobacco, drugs, medical care. And Egypt threw babies in the river. We've thrown 63 million in the trash. We're worse than Egypt. We deserve judgment, and it's coming. Okay, and it will come in the context of that earthquake that's triggered by the Muslims when they attack Jerusalem and take it. Okay, because they don't belong there, and the Lord is going to roar from Jerusalem. Heavens and earth will shake, and I will bet you San Andreas goes with it. I can say that partly because I took my medical training at Loma University at the end of the San Andreas Fault. And today, scientists say the San Andreas is 80 years overdue, can happen any time. My point is that the founder of Loma Linda did not want drugs, pharmacology, taught at Loma Linda. She wanted it for natural remedies to train missionaries. Well, the administrators of the school wanted to get AMA accreditation. They thought that would be great. Actually, it was a stupid decision, and it was like Israel of old wanting to have a king just to be like other nations. We wanted accreditation. We wanted others to think we're fine. Well, it would have been much better to agree with the founder, because today we find that drugs are a leading cause of illness and death. First of all, found in the JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, April 15, 1998, how 106,000 died from adverse drug reactions in hospitals. 2 years later, a Western Journal of Medicine reported 199,000 outside the hospital. You put them together, inside the hospital, outside the hospital, it's 305,000. And medical care is the third leading cause of death at that point in the year 2000. And it has increased since then in a 7-year study in the Archives of Internal Medicine that was October 10th, 2007, reporting a 7 years from 1998 to 2005. The increase in deaths 2.7-fold makes 824,000 deaths a year, and medical care is number one cause of death, but a lying CDC never reports medical care or adverse drug reactions. They're in business with pharma. They report heart disease. Why? They want you to take their different drugs for blood pressure, cholesterol, etc. Diabetic medicine, similar, so that we... I don't think I'm even plugged in. My lands. Well, that's all right. If I'm believing you can still hear me. And so, thank you for this opportunity. I'm approaching the end of time, so I'll just tell you, bottom line, in the Bible, we should have believed that pharmakia in Revelation 18:23 is what deceives all nations. And the former editor of the New England Journal of Medicine understood that. Marcia Angel, M.D., wrote a book, The Truth About the Drug Companies, How They Deceive Us. And we've been deceived by pharma. But the point is, we've been deceived many ways, and bad translations are part of the factor why we aren't ready and better today. The wedding parables have one more that we haven't commented on, and that is that In Matthew 22, the king sends his servants to bid people to a wedding. And they're scorned, ridiculed, treated badly until the king sends his armies and burns up their city. Well, in 70 A.D., Jerusalem got burned. And I believe personally that Loma Linda, where I was at, was going to burn because they hijacked or took Ellen White's school. She paid the deposit for the school. She wanted it for natural remedies. If they had done that, we would have been better ahead for epidemics and pandemics and things like that, because high evidence suggests that what's been done didn't prevent the pandemic, didn't make it worse, make it milder. The British Medical Journal gave more truth than we have when they said that a vegan diet gave 73% less severity to healthcare workers that got COVID on a vegan diet. Well, the wedding feast of Matthew 22, I believe, because it's at Passover, is really a feast of unleavened bread. But it's not about crackers. Christ said, "Beware the leaven of Pharisees," meaning their doctrines. And we will need to have a cluster of doctrines that are restored by Elijah. Elijah is supposed to come and restore all things in Matthew 17:11. And we see him coming in the context of statutes and judgments in Malachi 4, verse 4 and 5. Statutes and judgments are sevenfold emphasis in Ezekiel 20, verses 11 to 24. And my point is that any topic that has a sevenfold emphasis, I think, is a mark of end-time truth, just like Revelation has 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 thunders, 7 trumpets. We need to know what those sevens are in order to make a covenant with Christ, and because that's what needs to be restored, and we can be the Elijahs for the end time. We can be the 144,000 virgins in Revelation 14:4, and in Matthew 25. It's the 5 wise that get into the wedding, I believe, are the 144,000 virgins in Revelation. And we have the privilege of following Christ wherever he goes in eternity if we make the covenant, get into the wedding, and live well for the 7 years of tribulation. That's how I'm seeing it. And you can get more information in my books. The book that most appropriately explains what I'm just now telling you is The Earthquake and 7 Seals. It's on Amazon, and you can go to my website to, just look up my name, Ruhling, Ruhling, on Amazon as an author, and the title, The Earthquake and 7 Seals, and you can get it for $2.99 digital. That's cheap, and a few more dollars for the soft cover. So that was what will enable us to do the wedding feast. And there's another book also on my website, Health, Happiness, Destiny. Those are 3 words everybody wants. We all want health, happiness, destiny. And if you watch the little video there, 90 seconds trailer, you may want to get it also for $2.99, cheap, but how it all ends. And that's what we want to know, because we want to be ready for each thing as it comes. God won't do anything without revealing it, it says in Amos 3:7. And the next verse says, "The lion has roared, who will not fear?" He wants us to reveal the lion's roar. I'm explaining to you about Christ is the Lion of Judah. And so get the book and study, read. We ought to encourage one another to pray and live for him well in the times ahead. So thank you very much for considering this. We need to be his servants, bidding people to a wedding, and doing all we can to call attention to Bible prophecy, because it's right on target and it fits with what the Muslims are doing in the Middle East. Things are escalating. I promise you that this spring, April, May, is going to be huge. And May 19, take a vacation, get out of town, stay a week, because that's how the flood came after Noah went into the ark. They rejected his invitation. And a week later, though, they wished that they hadn't. They drowned in the flood. We're not going to see a flood of water, but we may see a flood of immigrants coming into this country be destroyed by a flood of people, and we're going to see a dark day. And I don't know if it's a EMP attack of our power grid, or whether the earthquake ruins the power grid or what, but I say martial law is coming, and that's what Christ said. When you see the military flee. Don't even go down to get your things. Well, if you plan now, you can take your things and get out of the city, take a vacation, and be ready to rent someplace in the country where you can survive. If not, people that are under martial law, if the power grid goes down, they're dead a year later. 90% of them, because the truckers can't pump the fuel. So get ready, and thank you very much. God bless you.